American Horror Story has one of the most memorable theme songs on television, and each season it is accompanied by some abstract, creepy visuals that make up its title sequences. These sequences change each year to reflect the season's focus, but the title sequence has become just as iconic as the theme song itself. So today I'm going to be taking you through each of the show's 12 title sequences, giving you a bit of their history, and at the end, I will rank them from my least favorite to my favorite. If you're an AHS fan like me, then you're definitely in the right place. I've been embarking on a ton of deep dives on AHS. So far, I've done Cult, Roanoke, Double Feature, Murder House, and coming up next, I'm doing Coven. So make sure you are subscribed for all of that, as well as, of course, some non-AHS content as well, if you choose to pay attention to that. But as we take the title sequences season by season, I will also be giving each of them a score based on 4 criteria that I will be using to make the ranking at the end of the video. Firstly, how strong are the visuals, especially pertaining to the horror genre? Like, is it scary? Secondly, how well does the sequence foreshadow the events of the season to come? Third, does the title sequence make any alterations to the theme song? And lastly, I have a bonus category that I'm calling the individuality category or the memorability category. I'll throw an extra point or two a sequence's way if I feel like it is really doing something out of the box. So without further ado, let's take it all the way back to the history of the title sequence that started it all, Murder House. Ever since Season 1, AHS's title sequences have been handled by a visual effects studio called Prologue, which is run by the prolific title designer Kyle Cooper, who serves as title designer on all of the sequences we're talking about today. But just to give you a tiny bit of scope on this guy's work, he's done some of the most iconic title cards and sequences in film, TV, and video games, including Seven, Home Alone, The Walking Dead, Feud, and Wicked, but that's truly only scratching the surface. In an interview with artofthetitle.com, Cooper says that he was approached by Ryan Murphy before cameras started rolling on Season 1. So, based only on the scripts and a visit to the Rosenheim mansion, Kyle Cooper then met back with Murphy with some references, and the rest is history. This also set the trend of Cooper filming the title sequences before seeing any of the footage from the season itself, as he would also do with later seasons. Something just as iconic to the show as its theme song and its title sequence is its Gothic font, inspired by architect Charles Rennie Mackintosh. But that font was not honed in on just yet while early in development on the Season 1 title sequence, as you can see by these test stills, which use a more generic typeface by comparison. Interestingly enough, the font we all associate with AHS today actually has some ties to the filming location for the murder house in Los Angeles, the Rosenheim Mansion. On a visit to the Rosenheim Mansion, while still in the pre-production phase of Season 1, Cooper was initially inspired by a Frank Lloyd Wright book that was inside the house that had its title written in a similar style font. That led him down a more gothic route for the font that he would use in the title sequence, that of course now has become an anchor of the show's brand. So, how did these eerie-ass visuals find that equally disturbing theme song? Well, it was title sequence editor Gabriel J. Diaz who recalled an experimental song his friend had made and shared with him nearly a decade earlier. Not feeling as though any of the temp tracks given to him by the creative team fit the abrasive nature of the visuals and title cards, he found his friend's creepy composition to fit the tone much better, and inevitably the creative team, producers, and Ryan Murphy himself ended up loving the match as well. That friend was Cesar Davila Irizarry, who achieved some of those now instantly recognizable sounds by stretching and slowing down audio of clothes hangers being thrown on the floor.
That song came about me just experimenting with sound for the first time. I had been interested in experimental music and the degradation of sounds in a digital way. And I was stretching different recordings. I was playing around with samples. That song Also came from an emotional side. Okay. Because I wanted to let go of very emotional. I don't know, like of letting go of people.
Of course, yeah.
So I wanted to create something sonically that represented what I was feeling. And at one point, I decided to just throw coat hangers to the floor.
That's amazing. Yeah.
And
yeah, come up with that.
It's, you're just testing things out and seeing what works and what doesn't work. And back then the process was very slow because the computer was really old. Mm-hmm. So I would start rendering the sound processing, go to Blockbuster, rent a movie, come back, watch the movie, finish the movie, and then wait for a couple more minutes for the thing to finish. And right now it just takes 2 seconds. But back then it would take a couple of hours.
Of course, yeah.
And at one point I did that with the coat hangers and I liked it, and I started putting it together as best that I could because I didn't really know multi-track recording, which is very common today. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know anything back then. So I put that together and I played around with some samples in a way that it wouldn't be distinguishable what it was.
Yeah.
And that's how the rhythm and the very mysterious melody comes in. Mm-hmm. And because of how I treated those sounds, the melody sounds much more like a ghost. And then you put those two together, that subtle, haunting, kind of quirky rhythm and that striking, harsh noise, and it makes you feel something.
Yeah.
It forces you to.
It totally does.
Yeah, so I see how like you putting that in the titles glued everything together.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, sound affects you psychologically in ways that people do not perceive.
Yeah.
We are a very visual, visually centric society.
Yeah, definitely.
So you can use sound in ways that people don't notice. You can be discreet and influence how they're thinking.
Given that this song was created out of experimental and emotional expression with no commercial intention at the time, Cesar didn't have any stems to give FX, thus the decision to bring in an additional composer, Charlie Clouser.
At that time, they just told me that they wanted it, and then they would send me the contract. I think that's what happened in the first call. Later on, they told me that they needed it. They needed stems. And the thing is that back when I made the song, like I mentioned before, I didn't know anything. Now I know about stems.
Of course, yeah.
When they called me and told me about it, I knew about stems.
Yeah.
But I was just too excited to realize that they were going to ask me for them.
Yeah.
And then at that moment, that's when we ended up making an agreement where I gave them some of the rights because I couldn't make the stems right away because I was booked through like that week and the week after. So I gave them some of the rights. They hired someone else. I crossed my fingers it was gonna be someone good.
Yeah.
And then when I get the contract, I find out that it's Charlie Clouser.
Yeah, exactly.
Which to me was amazing because he worked in The Downward Spiral, and The Downward Spiral is the Nine Inch Nails album that influenced me into going into sound. So he worked on it. I gave him notes on how I worked on that because he needed basically to recreate a sample.
Yeah.
So I gave him as many notes as I could on how to recreate those things. And I think maybe like a month after there was the premiere.
Yeah, it was pretty quick.
Yeah, and that's when I finally saw the final work that he did, and it sounds just like it, which is great. Yeah, and then I met him a year after that, when we were gonna pick up our first award for it.
Charlie Clouser is a former member of Nine Inch Nails, as well as being the composer for the Saw franchise. Speaking of prolific horror franchises from the 2000s, for any fellow Final Destination fans out there, there's a pretty damning connection to AHS here as well, as Kyle Cooper was actually working on the title sequence for Final Destination 5 at the same time as working on the Murder House title sequence. Well, technically he was working on it before Ryan Murphy officially even gave him the job. Quote, I took a risk by shooting stuff myself before I was even awarded the job. On Final Destination 5, Cooper was not only the title designer, but also the second unit director, and in his words, "I was shooting Final Destination 5, and we found this old Mary Pickford stage with a basement and trap door that we needed for a setup. I didn't have a purchase order or agreement, but I had my crew there, so I was thinking about the little baby, the Infantata, running around in that basement, and I located a Super 16mm camera, which has a more grainy quality. Up until Hotel, I shot everything for AHS on a Super 16 because I liked that quality for the show." Cooper's cinematography, as he puts it, was meant to emulate Thaddeus's point of view as he is scurrying around the basement. Truly, everything came together in the end with AHS's inaugural title sequence. The unsettling song, the hair-raising visuals, and that gothic font struck a chord, and it's no wonder why the title sequence became so integral to the show's DNA. The visuals of Murder House's intro largely center around the basement with old photographs from the 19th and 20th centuries, jarred body parts, and several many creepy, mysterious, and vague images of horror ambience. As Kyle Cooper explained in that interview, he was really only told about the Charles Montgomery storyline in the season. Compared to later title sequences, which try to encompass more than just one storyline within the season, it does stand out for how constricted it is in its location, but it works tremendously because of how unnerving and genuinely scary the sequence turned out. On top of that, it clued viewers in that there were still secrets that remained within those haunted halls, as the true story of Thaddeus culminates in the middle of the season. The visuals are transitioned with some film burn dissolves that are replicated in many of the following title sequences. So for our horror visuals category, I have to give this one a 5 out of 5. I would say that this is the scariest title sequence of them all. As for the foreshadowing of this intro, of course, Charles' practices were on display, as well as hints towards the clothing of the Infantata, and a hole in the basement leading towards the crawl spaces that house not only the Infantata, but also some of the house's other dark secrets. The fire present in the title sequence may be a nod towards the fire that occurred inside the murder house involving Larry Harvey and family. And there are a couple shots of a few skeletons, more specifically 3 skeletons, which could easily be a hint towards the doomed fate of the 3 members of the Harmon family. So while it is largely focused on the horrible 20th century vibes of the Montgomerys, there are some hints towards the larger season that can be pulled out. So I'll give it a 2 out of 5 in the foreshadowing category. As for the title sequence having a unique song, I think it's a no-brainer that the original theme song arrangement is a 5 out of 5, based on impact alone. Frankly, it's one of the most unique and unnerving theme songs to ever air on television. For the bonus category, I'll throw Murder House just 1 extra point. It already has so many, so that leaves my final score of the Murder House title sequence at 13. The team had a lot to live up to attempting their second title sequence, and the Asylum opening credits rely on very similar visual strategies as Murder House's. Super dark imagery, figuratively and literally. Some of these shots are very hard to make out. Unlike season 1, Kyle Cooper and company had access to the actual set of Briarcliff to shoot the title sequence, and he once again employed his Super 16mm camera, which allows for some continuity between these early intros. Title sequence designer Kyle Cooper actually stepped in front of the camera for a shot in Asylum's title sequence. As he explained, there was one setup where I was trying to get this actor to rock back and forth on the bed, and she just didn't want to do it, so I went in. So let's analyze this shit. With a primary location of the Asylum's common room, the sequence mostly depicts various patients behind bars being tortured, as well as portraying the religious aspects of the season, pulling the strings by way of the nuns that are featured throughout the sequence. The title cards themselves have a nice yellow-orange tint to them, and the visuals continue the film burn aesthetic from Murder House, while also distorting the footage in new, creepy ways. The sequence itself also feels very frenetic and fast-paced, which certainly incites anxiety in the viewer, but I think it also makes some of its visuals not as clear or memorable as other seasons. With bloody eyes, dead bodies in carts, and implied sexual assault, the sequence is pretty darn scary, but when it comes to horror visuals category, I think it loses a few points when compared to Murder House, since, like I said, not so many of the shots get enough light or time to be fully understood, so Asylum for me gets a 3 out of 5 in the horror visuals category. In terms of foreshadowing, a nun committing sexual assault, the bodies being taken out of the asylum through the underground carts, and the sinister overarching religious presence are all clearly foreshadowing specific events or themes in the season. The Virgin Mary's grin turning more sinister also seems like a reference to the possession of Sister Mary Eunice, and some of the fast, gory shots in the sequence are similar to the crimes of Bloody Face as well as Dr. Arden. There is a fair share of foreshadowing in Asylum's title sequence, but none of it is super mind-blowing in retrospect, so I will give it a 3 out of 5 for this category. In terms of music, it seems as though the theme song has just been revamped with a little bit of reverb and some sound effects that correspond with on-screen visuals, like thunder and whispering, but for the most part, it's an identical arrangement to Season 1's rendition, so for the unique song category, Asylum automatically gets a 1 out of 5. In the bonus category, I threw Asylum an extra point, mostly for those orange letters, as that is my favorite color, and I think those titles look very pleasing and Halloween-y because of this choice. So based on all of that, Asylum gets an 8. Visually desaturated, with some shots in complete black and white, the Coven title sequence does a lot differently. The title cards themselves feature some animated backgrounds. The sequence isn't tied to just one location, but rather several era-spanning images of spiritual practices focused on witchcraft and voodoo. Cooper once again employed his 16mm camera, but there are also many drawings and even some CGI employed in this title sequence. There are also a bunch of demons and beasts. And have you ever wondered about this creature specifically? Well, turns out this was a 3D model of a creature designed for a film project that fell through. As Kyle Cooper told Phantasmag, as a kid, he liked horror movies. Not slashers, but monster movies. I would obsessively sharpen my pencil and draw these incredibly detailed creatures. It was a way to lose myself and process difficulties in my life. I didn't know that the creature went viral on Tumblr. It was originally made for something else, a pitch for a film adaptation of C.S. Lewis's The Screwtape Letters. That fell through, but I had this model and I wanted to use it. I put it in the sequence and nobody complained. I thought it would be spooky and make the audience go, "What's that?" So while this movie monster may not have made it to the big screen, it still haunts plenty AHS fans' nightmares, I'm sure. The visuals in the intro also include more distinct imagery from the show, like rams, goats, minotaurs, and witches being hanged and burnt at the stake. The intro is also full of shots of these witches in black hoods, which are strikingly reminiscent of the KKK, which is probably intentional based on the season's themes of racism and oppression. Additionally, it is also a take on the pointy witch hat, I guess. While all of that is pretty damn terrifying, the scary stuff is mixed with some animated cats and glamour shots, so I'll go ahead and give it a 4 out of 5 in the horror visuals category. When it comes to foreshadowing, I think this one takes the cake for having the most foreshadowing in any title sequence. Aside from everything I've already mentioned, Sarah Paulson's title card appearing in front of an image of Santa Muerte is largely seen as a clue towards Cordelia's ultimate fate of being the Supreme. Spoiler alert. Similarly, both Thaisa Farmiga and Lily Rabe's title cards foreshadow the fates of their characters, Zoe and Misty. So all of that said, and given the amount of information about the season's story and characters that seems to be revealed with these clues, I'm gonna give Coven a 5 out of 5 in the foreshadowing category. For the song category, there are again no changes to the original theme song, So that's a 1 out of 5 for that category. And for the bonus category, I'll throw Coven just 1 extra point for its uniqueness in terms of the black and white imagery and the weird-ass beast, which brings Coven's score to a 11. Freak Show breaks the mold of the title sequence in 2 major ways. For one, it alters the song for the first time, and it also primarily utilizes stop-motion animation. We built a miniature circus set. We were thinking about stop-motion animators like this guy, the Quay brothers, and Ray Harryhausen. We built it shot by shot, drawing and modeling circus wagons and baby sculptures that pulled their own heads off, Kyle Cooper told Phantasmag. With its use of stop-motion animation, Freak Show is an automatic favorite of mine, but admittedly, it is more cool than it is scary. That is, unless you're super scared of clowns or dolls. They definitely could have created a scarier title sequence while still using stop-motion, but I respect this tonal choice nonetheless. However, I will just give it a 2 out of 5 in the horror visuals category, since that doesn't seem to be exactly what they were going for this year. Where it lacks in the scares, it certainly makes up for in its song, as Freak Show marked the first major change to the AHS theme song, with a major melody being played through the sound of a music box. That was a great choice in my opinion, and I give Freak Show a 4 out of 5 in its unique song category. And it also earns 2 bonus points for its lovely stop motion use, which brings Freak Show's final score to 9. Visually, the hotel intro feels similar to the Murder House one, as both pay homage to haunted house tropes. This makes complete sense, as these were the first 2 seasons to revolve around a haunted location. So the bleeding walls, crying brides, and the more specific hotel-centric visuals like the repeated use of the peephole shots and references to characters like Hazel or the vampire children makes this sequence feel very fresh despite thematic similarities. Perhaps what makes this title sequence stand out the most is the use of neon letters, of course meant to reflect the neon hotel sign. This choice really ties together the whole thing, although personally I think it gets diluted with the 10 Commandments slides also being written this way. My personal preference maybe would be to not include the 10 Commandments in this, or if you are going to include them, do it in a different font than the neon font, because it makes the actor's name stand out less, honestly, and it's a bit distracting. When it comes to the horror visuals, I'm going to give Hotel a 3 out of 5 because it is doing a lot of interesting and scary stuff with the visuals, but it doesn't try too hard to reinvent itself like some others. Following in Freak Show's footsteps, Hotel also gave us a new moody rendition of the theme song, which earns it an automatic 5 out of 5 in that category. It is one of my favorite renditions of that song. When it comes to foreshadowing, there's a good deal of it here. The 10 Commandments themselves having a heavy influence on the season. Images of people being trapped behind walls could foreshadow James Patrick March's sealed up hallways. The maid frivolously cleaning blood is clearly a representation of Hazel. The mattress monster makes an appearance not too dissimilar from how he appears in the show, alongside several ghouls and vampire kids that also have counterparts in the show. That said, Hotel earns a 3 out of 5 in the foreshadowing category, and I'll throw in 1 bonus point for the stylistic choices like the peephole shots and the neon motif, which brings Hotel's score up to 12. We've now come upon Roanoke, which, as any AHS fan knows, did not have a title sequence. I know, controversial. Largely, this comes down to the fact that Roanoke is presented to the audience as a show within a show, pretending to be a true crime-esque docuseries recreating the stories of this family's haunting, and the show is entitled My Roanoke Nightmare. And then halfway through the season, it becomes another show within a show, basically the sequel to that initial initial show. Executive producer Alexis Martin Woodall was basically quoted saying that the choice to not include a title sequence came down to this. The nature of what we were doing with Roanoke, we were paying homage to a terrible kind of reality show that has its own personality. To break that wall when you go to the title card, My Roanoke Nightmare, with the crazy scribbly text and the angsty bloody tree, and then go into the title sequence, the question becomes, what are we telling the viewer to care about? Are we telling them, don't ever really buy into My Roanoke Nightmare because don't worry, it's just American Horror Story? Or are we really trying to be subversive? Ryan said, I think we should do one. And I said, I don't think we should. It was a real conversation because we are so known for our title sequences, but we are doing so many other subversive things in terms of the path of the show, and season 6 was like nothing else we had ever done. So yeah, all of that to say they didn't want to break the illusion of the show within the show, but if you've watched my deep dive on Roanoke, I'm gonna again bring this up, they already break the illusion by cutting to the American Horror Story title card in every single episode of Roanoke. It makes no damn sense. They have 2 fucking title cards. You are both pissing off some fans by not giving them a title sequence and actively doing what you claim to be trying not to do by breaking the illusion of telling the audience it is all American Horror Story. This happened 10 years ago. I'm not bitter, I promise. All of that said, Roanoke will be left out of this ranking for obvious reasons. Moving on to Cult. Cult, of course, brings back some more clown imagery, lots of smoke and intoxicating teal tone over everything, as well as extreme close-ups of bees and various images in reference to American iconography. Title designer Kyle Cooper said in an interview that the 2 title sequences he would change nothing about were Murder House and Cult, and I can definitely see why Cult takes a high spot for him. Cult's visuals are centered on the phobias of the character Allie Mayfair Richards, the season's main protagonist. So we're dealing with clowns, bees, clusters of holes, as well as some various American imagery and shots alluding to chemical warfare. Honestly, that's all pretty damn scary, and to me they achieved some of the best horror visuals in this title sequence since Coven. So I give it a 4 out of 5 in that category. When it comes to foreshadowing, like I said, nearly every shot alludes to one of Allie's fears, and the beehive imagery also alludes to the cult itself. The themes of government corruption and chemical warfare directly correspond to plot lines in the season as well. So while it doesn't give too much specifically away, each shot does feel like it has an intentional connection to the story of the season. So I give Cult a 3 out of 5 in the foreshadowing category. When it comes to the song, I gotta say Cult has my favorite rendition of the theme song, perfectly fitting the vibe of the season with loud horns and cymbals. They're clearly emulating the national anthem, even including the melody, and I'm very glad they went this direction sonically. 5 out of 5 for an original rendition of the theme song. And lastly, I'll throw Cult a bonus point for that overwhelmingly green hue over everything, which some people may not be a fan of, but I love, as well as the 3D title cards that occasionally interact with the visuals behind them. I think that's a fun touch, and that brings Cult to a score of 13. Reusing several shots from the Murder House and Coven title sequences, this intro is pretty dang spooky. The new shots in Apocalypse's intro include tons of candles, snakes, images of nuclear war, alongside various devilish imagery. The nuclear war shots are a good, terrifying addition, and it looks like they used some historical photos, and my favorite thing about this one is its use of overlays. I think they're so creative and make for some really good looking shots that I feel like you could find in a modern art museum. Apocalypse is a title sequence I never skip, so 4 out of 5 when it comes to horror visuals. When it comes to the song, there is no change, unfortunately, so that's a 1 out of 10, even though I know the reason behind it. It is a sequel season to the original season. There's also some foreshadowing here, of course, with the satanic and apocalyptic stuff. That speaks for itself, but I've always thought that the footage of the candles melting in reverse might have been a hint towards the time travel elements of the season. There's also this. Emma Roberts' name appears in front of a photo of people with their heads getting blown off, which could have been some crude foreshadowing of this fateful moment. But given that I highly doubt that the intricacies of the Apocalypse finale were written at the time of the production of the title sequence, I don't know if this was truly foreshadowing or just a coincidence. Who knows? But Cheyenne Jackson's title card also could allude to his character, John Moore, who has the ability to manipulate fire. So there is some general foreshadowing and some moments that seem a little bit too much, but nonetheless, I give Apocalypse a 3 out of 5 in the foreshadowing category. I'm also throwing a bonus point for individuality with those overlays, which brings Apocalypse's score to a 9. After the 80s slasher theme was announced for season 9, a fan of the show and video editor Corey Vega posted his own concept for the title sequence. This title sequence was noticed by Ryan Murphy, who then put Vega in contact with Kyle Cooper himself. Speaking to Phantasmag about his experience, Vega said, "The intro is a staple of the show, and it's one of the most iconic television intros of all time. The theme song alone gives me chills. I wanted to mash up that existing identity with the grainy, campy, saturated look that I had grown up watching with 80s horror. The concept was this: you're a child who stayed up way past their bedtime, you fumble through your TV cabinet and come across an unmarked VHS tape. You pop it in, the screen glitches, and flashes of terrifying images cycle on screen. Creepy close-ups and moody establishing shots. Aesthetically, it's embodying the perfect 80s slasher, a cursed VHS tape. All I knew was I wanted to post something for the fans. I had been interacting with all these online forums for years, listening to fan theories, and I felt like I finally had something to add to the conversation. The AHS community is very supportive, and I felt strongly that I should share this with them. The morning after, my edit had been reposted almost 300 times. It was on all the fan sites. I even saw it on Instagram, reposted in Portuguese and French. I was honored that the fans, who are very transparent about their opinions on the show, responded to my art with such praise. It wasn't until almost a week later that I checked my inbox and learned that Ryan Murphy had seen it and wanted to hire me. Naturally, I thought it was a scam. It was surreal. I've been a fan of his since Glee, but I was told later that Ryan was very explicit in his instructions to get me on their team as a conceptual designer. When it comes to horror visuals, again, it's mostly archival footage, but it plays on the character Mr. Jingles and his knack for stealing people's ears, and aside from this truly horrifying shot, it's not all that scary. The goal of this one is more to set up that 80s summer camp vibe, with some very specific things linking it to the year of 1984, like footage from the Los Angeles Olympics, Reagan, etc. There are also some more overlays, but it's mostly some bright red blood, nothing as creative as the ones in Apocalypse. As much as I like the title sequence, its visuals aren't super original or horrifying, so I'll just give it a 1 out of 5 in the horror visuals category. Much like the Freak Show title sequence, it's just going for something slightly different than the other title sequences. Where it lacks in that category, it makes up for with one of the best renditions of the theme song, a drum and synth-heavy 80s jam that may not be scary either, but it's an easy 5 out of 5 in the unique song category. Aside from the ears, the only possible foreshadowing I could pick up on was that Leslie Grossman's title card is sandwiched between two shots representing Mr. Jingles, which may have been a clue towards the big twist of Margaret Booth. That said, it's just a 2 out of 5 in the foreshadowing category. But I'll also throw in 2 bonus points 1984's way, because it's really trying something different with the title sequences, and I absolutely love that they took inspiration from a fan's great idea and gave him proper attribution. So those bonus points bring 1984's score up to 10. For for the next couple title sequences, we don't know too much about how they were made, so I'll mostly be focusing on the analysis. For Double Feature, of course, there were 2 mini-seasons in one, so they had 2 separate title sequences. So for the first part of Double Feature, which was subtitled Red Tide, it's not personally my cup of tea. If you're scared of fine china or red meat, then this intro must be fucking terrifying. It mostly accomplishes establishing us in Provincetown, Massachusetts, where most of the season takes place, and then some general vampire vibes and references to the chemist's experiments. 2 out of 5 in the horror visuals category for me. As for foreshadowing, there are very few interpretations of plot events. It's really just the location, the blood, the meat, and the chemist. 1 out of 10 in the foreshadowing category. And sadly, Red Tide doesn't get a special version of the theme song. It just has some sound effects interspersed, which is a nice touch, but that is still a 1 out of 10 in the original song category. This one's just very literal and does nothing new, so I'm not giving it any bonus points, leaving it with a score of 4. For Death Valley, as usual, working off of early scripts, Kyle Cooper was intrigued by the tentacle aspect of Death Valley's aliens and wanted to go for a body horror vibe once again. The script mentioned the aliens having tentacles, so we got a squid. The sequence came from a visual I imagined of the alien squirming around in something like water. Additionally, Cooper said that he was surprised when he was told Season 10 would be split into 2 different stories, as he was previously under the impression the Red Tide story would be given all 10 episodes.
Imagine a world like that.
Death Valley's visuals are the most CGI heavy compared to the previous ones, which I was apprehensive about at first, but with some distance, there's actually a pretty good mix of real footage and the CGI shots, and the CGI shots are worthwhile in my opinion. We're focused on UFOs, clocks, tentacles, and babies once again. The shots of the tentacles wrapping around people's arms and throats are actually pretty scary, and the intro achieves an unnerving tone that is scarier than Red Tide or 1984's title sequences, so I give Death Valley a 3 out of 5 in the horror visuals category. But I will say some of the visuals are very repetitive in this one. When it comes to foreshadowing, it's again pretty surface level. The season deals with an alien race trying to create a hybrid baby with humans, so all of the baby and birth imagery is self-explanatory, and the clock could be a reference to the different time periods explored in the season. But yeah, honestly, there's nothing really specific in terms of foreshadowing, so 1 out of 5 in that category. Again, Death Valley didn't do an original rendition of the theme song either, so that's an automatic 1 out of 5 for that category, but I will throw an extra point Death Valley's way for doing a couple more creative overlays that reminded me of Apocalypse. That brings Death Valley's score up to 6. There's a lot going on in NYC's intro. Blood, viruses, deer, photography, weird-ass cocktail umbrellas, and lots of images referring to queer sex culture and BDSM. And while the main antagonistic force of NYC is Big Daddy, the iconography of the title sequence relies more heavily on references to the Mai Tai killer, a less overbearing presence in the season. Talking about this with Phantasmag, Kyle Cooper said, "There are plenty of shots of leather, but I wanted the umbrella in the Mai Tai to be the primary thread for the sequence. So I distorted it and created some kaleidoscopic imagery where it splits into cells and becomes a multiplying virus." Right, yeah. Like the previous intro, NYC also features a mix of real footage and CGI. When it comes to the images that are clearly referencing the toll that HIV takes on the human body, those are truly fucking terrifying. So I give NYC a 3 out of 5 in the horror visuals category, but I do find some of it to be a little bit copy and paste from Red Tide, especially with the editing, so it could have been pushed a little further. Foreshadowing wise, this is another one where every image has a corresponding plot point in this season, and I respect it for that. However, they're not super revealing at the end of the day, so 2 out of 5 in that category. Unfortunately, NYC continues the streak of having no changes to the theme song, so that's a 1 out of 5. I will give it an extra point for the weird choices made for what they were doing with the Mai Tai umbrellas, and overall, there were interesting color choices in this one. NYC's overall score is 7. Last but not least, we have come to the most recent season of American Horror Story at the time of recording this, AHS Delicate. Harkening on the pregnancy-related fears of protagonist Anna in the season, much like Colt did with Allie, Delicate's sequence employs body horror yet again. And much like the season itself, Delicate's intro lifts a lot from intros of the past. More snakes, more pregnancy, CGI babies, meat, and blood splatters make up a majority of this intro, alongside some more unique shots like of plastic surgery, beauty supplies, burning dolls, storks, and lots of spiders. And a lot like Colt's consistent green coloring, this title sequence has a consistent red coloring with an occasional contrasting green. I'm a sucker for some monochrome or duochrome lighting, so I like a lot of the visuals themselves, even if they do feel like diluted versions of similar shots in other title sequences, and generally these later title sequences lose a lot of that grime that the intros of seasons 1 through 8 had. There's some scary stuff here though, so I will give it a 3 out of 5 in that category. Foreshadowing wise, of course, it's another pregnancy-centric season, so all of that tracks, but these dolls also have a presence in the season, and the baby with the claws in the title sequence briefly appears in the season as well. Perhaps all of the visual similarities to intros like Murder House, Coven, and Cult may have also been foreshadowing that, despite having zero tangible connections to those seasons, Delicate deals with nearly identical themes as them: pregnancy, spousal gaslighting, witchcraft, and even cults. And again, no new song, so 1 out of 5, and I reward Delicate 0 bonus points, bringing its score up to 6. And that brings us to the ranking portion of the video, where I compare all of those composite scores to see which title sequence arbitrarily takes the cake. But again, make sure you drop your rankings in the comments below, because my opinions are just as valuable as yours. In last place at number 12, I have Red Tide. Number 11, Delicate. Number 10, NYC. Number 9, Death Valley. Number 8, Asylum. Number 7, Apocalypse. Number 6, Freak Show. Number 5, 1984. Number 4, Coven. Number 3, Hotel. Number 2, Cult. And number 1, Murder House. And before I conclude this video, I want to thank all of you who have hit that subscribe button over the years. We have recently hit 20,000. I've been at this for 7 years, so the fact that we've been able to consistently discuss some of my favorite things with you guys for so long is a real blessing. So thanks again, and I can't wait to talk about this upcoming year of horror, as there's a lot in store. Throughout 12 seasons, Kyle Cooper and Prologue Films have helped shape one of my favorite TV shows, and through their embrace of different forms of media and even fan participation, these title sequences truly have lives of their own, feeling both integral to the seasons they're tied to, but also having enough artistic merit to stand on their own as an exaggerated sensory experience. I love the title sequences, and if you made it this far, I'm sure you do too, so be sure to drop your own rankings in the comments below, or if you don't have time for all that, at least let me know which title sequence is your favorite of the 12. And with that, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.